for Chase Elliott.
Yeah, buddy. We did it, boys.
This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. My name is Cameron Richardson. Joining me tonight, Johnny Crane, all the way out in Montrose, Colorado. Johnny, how are you doing on this lovely evening?
We actually got a race that somehow went through despite weather. I love it. It's great.
Yep, my mic stand's not working, so I got this bottomless mic until I figure out how to better set up my mic for future videos. But that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about Chase Elliott getting redemption after pitting on Sunday in the Coke 600 when he easily had the lead, easily could have won the thing had he stayed out. But nonetheless, comes out on Tuesday in the truck race, wins that, beats Kyle Busch, gets that bounty, and then tonight holds off Ryan Blaney, passes Harvick with around 20 to go, and takes the win for his first of 2020. Johnny, what are your reactions to Chase's victory?
This was a much-needed victory for Chase Elliott. After Kevin Harvick won his race, I feel as if Elliott was the next driver that really needed to get that monkey win off of his back. Really, really fast car, good amount of stage wins, was running in the top 10 relatively consistently, but there were some issues that held him from getting that illustrious win to start the year. Kyle Busch spinning him out in the Toyota 500, and then the pit crew malfunction controversy in the Coca-Cola 600. And now, finally, he got that speed early, he got that speed late, he maintained the speed, and he got the win. This really shows that he has a consistent car that can win and maintain himself within the top 10. So great win for Hendrick. Really showed a little more consistency after we saw the inconsistencies of Hendrick in the Coca-Cola 600 with Jimmy Johnson getting DQ'd and so on and so forth. But really good win for Elliott, really good car moving forward.
Yeah, and one thing I want to get into talking about this is comparing the racing from the Xfinity race on Monday, truck race on Tuesday, and then both cup races at Charlotte. Even with the PJ1 kind of being worked into, it was washed out by rain once again before we actually got started racing, was washed out for pretty much the majority of 2 days. So that obviously doesn't help when it comes to heating up that side, which they needed if they were going to create that second lane. But we did see that second lane kind of come in, especially on restarts, especially at the start of the race. You would see drivers forcing it 3 wide. We saw some 4 wide action. Kyle Busch cut a tire. I don't know how they did not wreck. Kyle Busch, Eric Almirola got loose coming off of 4. Kyle Busch cut a tire. The one thing that people need to see from that video, Ryan Preece cutting through the grass, saving the car, and it furthers even more that tracks need to install turf into the infield grass. Because before, when they had the extreme splitters, cars were getting torn up left and right, and if it rained, forget about it. If you went to the grass, you were done. But now, Charlotte, the only track with turf, drivers can go right through it easily, and if they spin out into the turf, they don't have to worry about tearing up their cars. So I think that's one aspect. One small aspect that needs to be installed. I think it does make a difference, especially if you're trying to avoid a wreck like that. Because let's say, had it been natural grass, and especially with all the rain, Ryan Preece's car would have been destroyed completely. But yeah, Johnny, what are your thoughts on the racing we've seen from the 2 cup races and then Xfinity and trucks?
So the past 3 races, what I really liked from the past 3 is we didn't really see it much in this race per se. The low lane was worked more than the high. But what I really liked in the Xfinity and really in the truck race was that they were utilizing more of the traction compound. They were really utilizing that high lane more. That's what Kyle Busch was doing when he was running in those races. We really didn't see that in this race. However, what we did see was more lanes, different lanes being used. There wasn't really much. Well, there still was single file racing, especially 4 or 5 laps after the restarts. But early on in the restarts, what we really saw was that 3 wide action, that 4 wide action, which really wasn't seen, at least to me, in the Coke 600. And when you combine that with the pit strategy still, with taking 2 tires or 4 tires and so on, it really added to the element of the race, and it added a little bit more excitement. Now, there's still a ways to go, I think. I think it could have been even more exciting, but it was definitely an improvement over the Coke 600. And it helps that the weather, even though that there was a red flag for over an hour, the weather was a little bit better, and I think it made the race go by a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I think one thing that made this race better was just drivers being on the edge of their seats at the very beginning. They were really pushing to get to the front as quickly as possible. The race was only 2 hours and 32 minutes long, which is the average length of an NBA game. People want shorter races, and I think this is one of those races that could really help get some of the races that aren't really the crown jewels. The crown jewels should always stay the same length because it's just tradition. But the tracks that could use shorter races, the Dovers, New Hampshires, they don't really need to run 300 laps. They don't really need to be over 3 hours long. So I think that's something to look forward to, especially with a brand new schedule coming out for 2021. And we have no word on what that 2021 schedule is going to look like aside from speed weeks. But on the flip side for Hendrick, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine for them. Alex Bowman had another great run. He led 51 laps, got a stage 2 victory, and then while chasing Kevin Harvick for the lead in the final stage, got into the wall, cut a tire, had to come to pit road, finished 31st. 6 out of the 8 races we've had in the season, Bowman has not finished in the top 10. He got his win at Auto Club, but had he not had that win in Auto Club, and he'd be sitting at 0 right now, he'd be one of those guys you look at and go, is he really the guy for Hendrick, the guy that should be in the 88 car? And even you could still ask that now because it's going to come down to consistency on whether or not Bowman will get past that 2021 contract. He already got that extension for next year, but in the future, when it's going to be potentially 4 young drivers for Hendrick, is Bowman going to be that guy that stays there long term for them?
It's a very interesting case because he has a really fast car. He comes out early, and what I really have noticed is that he isn't falling back because he's being aggressive, super aggressive, like say Kyle Busch has been, racing, speeding out of pit road, and so on. It's been that monkey, that wrench that sort of Elliott had, except I think it's a little bit worse in that damage to the car is happening more so with Bowman than I would say Elliott. And I think that damage, I don't know if it's an aggressiveness thing or if it's the rest of the cars behind him thing, but it is a very interesting case because you're right. He only has 1 year left. He got that extension, but beyond that, where will he go? Do they keep him after that? He really has to improve on his racing from start to finish. He has the most stage wins on the year. He has 4 stage wins, but aside from that Auto Club win, he hasn't really finished well at all, as you stated. So it's going to be a very interesting thing. Like I said, he has that win, so he is locked into the playoffs, but he has a lot to work with his pit crew and himself between now and the playoffs.
I think another guy, aside from Bowman, who's also sort of had a disappointing start to the season, Kyle Busch. While his stats aren't terrible for the year, he does not have a win yet, and he's not in the top 10 of driver points. He's in the top 10 if you look at the playoff standings, but when you look at driver points, he's outside the top 10. So is there a sort of panic that should be had over at Joe Gibbs? Hamlin's run well. He's got 2 wins, but for Truex, for Hamlin, for Eric Jones, is there a reason to panic yet at JGR?
I wouldn't say yet, even though Hamlin literally ballast came out of his car in the Coke 600, even aside that he still has 2 wins, and it's still really early. We're 7 races in? We've seen Kyle Busch consistently sort of just stay there, and then later on he really gets it going. And I definitely think he will get it going still. I think the problem he's had is, like I mentioned, you saw it a little bit in the truck race, and you've seen it in a lot of the other Cup races this year, is coming out of pit road. He's had some aggressiveness issues. He's been speeding on pit road. He's had to go to the rear. He's had to start the race at the rear due to technical issues with the car. And plus, when he was in the 4-wide situation in the race tonight, he was unfortunately at the bad end of that. And I think some of that is a little bit too aggressive, which is kind of his style, but also it's a luck thing. And I definitely think that he'll be okay moving forward. Ask me the question again, say 20 races in, and I think we'd have a more concrete feeling on where Busch is, where Jones is, where Truex is, and where Hamlin is. And Hamlin's in sort of a situation that Bowman is in, is that he's already locked into the playoffs. He has 2 wins on the year. He had the big ballast issue. He's still without his crew chief for 3 more races. He still has to work that communication now, but there's still plenty of room for error with those wins on the year for them, and there's plenty of room for correction for all of them.
Yeah. And another guy we got to look at on the Toyota side, Christopher Bell. Another good run for him. Didn't get a top 10, but got some stage points. And then moving on to John Hunter Nemechek as well. Not another top 10, but he's getting in the top 15, getting consistent finishes. Consistency is what a small team like Front Row Motorsports needs. And having Nemechek in that car as a rookie, what he's doing already as a rookie, is a big sign for them going forward. Bubba Wallace, trying to do the most he can with Richard Petty Motorsports, possibly the weakest team in this field, where this is a team that should have the money backed to have a solid team. Hello, the team is Richard Petty, 200 career wins, all time leader. There's no excuses for this team to not be running at least mid pack every single race. But no, it's always something mechanical that happens. Bubba running top 10 all race long, and then he has a brake issue, slams the wall, race is over. He finishes 37th. I mean, Johnny, what is it? It sort of feels like a setup. He was, this guy was pretty solid in the truck series, was very consistent in the Xfinity series. He comes to Cup, does the best he can with horrible equipment, running in the top 10, and here we go, another mechanical issue, which feels like the 25th or 30th occurrence I've seen since he's been in that 43 car.
Right. Every single time I'm looking at the order of the cars, when I'm looking at the stages as they conclude and as the race continues on, I'm consistently seeing Wallace 23rd, 27th, 30th, in that range. And when you look at what Richard Petty is, you would think that he'd be running at least top 20 and possibly top 15, top 10. He was in the top 10 in the beginning of the stage, but then unfortunately, like you said, the mechanical issues. What was disturbing to me was there was a tweet that said that he couldn't wreck the car even more or risk the car going out there because they couldn't afford to fix the hub or the problems on the car if he went back out. And you would think that Richard Petty, with that illustrious wins, the 200 plus wins and so on, you would think they would have a little bit more he's had this year, but to correct the issues, to potentially go back onto the race and to get back on the lead lap and maybe vie into that top 20 or that top 15. So setup, I'm not too sure, but it's definitely disappointing. The 43 is a very historic number in NASCAR, as you know, as any NASCAR fan knows, and running 28th, 29th in the 43, it's not good. And it's not really a good, I'm not going to say it's not a good look for NASCAR, but NASCAR is better when the 43 is running well. And if the 43 isn't running well, that's sort of that storyline and that piece of history of NASCAR that isn't living up to itself. So is Bubba the answer to the 43? I wouldn't be too sure. I think he'd be okay. Like you said, he was really good in the trucks. But the mechanical issues and the budget issues, I think, are a definite issue. And I don't know what the solution is. You would think they'd have the money, though, I would think.
Absolutely. And just saying, that 48 ride's going to be available in 2021. And I think Hendrick really, really needs to take a look at Bubba Wallace. Give the guy a chance in great equipment. If it doesn't work out, fine, you move on to someone in 2022. But he needs that shot in top-tier equipment to showcase his true talents. But obviously, the best performer of the day, getting a fourth-place finish, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. out of JTG Daugherty. Was very aggressive tonight. Made his positions up during the restarts, and then on the long runs he was able to get by some of the top tier guys. He got by Logano, he got by Harvick all on his own. You really have to give it to him and the team for putting together a great car. Yes, they have a lot of Hendrick backup, but this is a small team as well that doesn't really perform top level at these intermediate tracks. They're usually a road course team or a short track team, but this very, very positive signs for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Johnny, where's your reaction to Stenhouse's finish?
He was really good. He really needed this finish too, because similar to Bowman, he was finishing in that 20, 30, 40 range, except unlike Bowman, he didn't have that win on the year or that dominant win on the year at Auto Club that Bowman had. He really needed this finish. And what you're really seeing, he's sort of that untalked about Chevy right now. You know, you're talking about Elliott, you're talking about the Bowman issues of the world, but Stenhouse, he really was making really good runs. And I really thought that he was really going to push for maybe that top spot late in the race, because once those cars were separating, I feel as if he could have, even with that separation, I feel as if he probably could have done a little bit more, but even still, that's just splitting hairs at this point. Really good finish, and for a small team, like you said, really good sign.
Yeah. And looking at this top 10, Elliott with the win, Hamlin with the second place run after a terrible Coke 600, a very forgettable one, gets a second place finish. Ryan Blaney, great run, starting to rack up some great runs after a pretty sluggish outing in both Darlington races. He's getting back into it. Stenhouse, obviously, fourth place. Kurt Busch, fifth. He's been quietly getting great finishes. I believe this is for top 5 of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Having just putting together great consistent runs. And he's going to be, I think, even with one win last year, I think he's going to break out, possibly get multiple wins this year. He just needs that track. And I think Bristol is really that one where he can get that first one of the season. I think he's got to be one of the guys you got to look at for Sunday. Joey Logano, 6th place. Brad, 7th after being absent for the first, it felt like 150 laps. He got a quiet top 10. Austin Dillon, great run for him. A guy who's really struggled early on this season, gets his second top 10 of the year. Big run there. Mark Truex Jr., who was really saying his car was junk early on, somehow walked away with a top 10. It definitely finishes he needs to start racking up as we move on with these getting later into the season. And then I don't know how he did it. Car was fading late, but Harvick's 8 for 8 in top 10s this year, and he's tops the points too. So looking at points, driver points, this is not the playoff standings. Harvick's first, Logano second, Elliott third, Bowen fourth, and then Keselowski rounds out the top 5. So, I mean, I like this. I like the races we're having right now in the standings. I think there's a lot of parity at the moment. 6 different drivers have won in 8 races. So there's a lot of names out there that could sneak their way in and be a title contender. I mean, there's a ton right there. If Bowman can be more consistent, he is a title contender. Harvick's going to be there. We know that. Logano's going to be there. We know that. Truex is going to pick it up at some point. Kyle Busch is going to pick it up at some point. Hamlin's going to be there. There's a lot of guys out there that now, instead of having a big 3, we have like a group of 6, maybe 7 come the dog days of summer that could really be title contenders.
And those race results are official. No tech issue, no Jimmy Johnson disqualification. So those points are, they will stand. There won't be any goofiness. But like you said, 6, 7, 8 drivers. And I think that if NASCAR wants to build that fan base, they want to build upon that. I really think that they need more drivers to really get out there. And while you could potentially do that with 2 or 3 drivers, when you have 7 or 8, you have more to choose from. And what I really like is that it's a really different age group. You have the veterans in Harvick, and you have the youngsters in Elliott and Bowman. And I think if you have that mix of youth and you have that mix of experience, that both could contend for the title, I think that really creates for a lot more diversity. And I think it creates a lot more excitement as, like you said, the dog days of summer continue.
Yep. Very, very excited. Bristol this Sunday. Very excited. Johnny, you got Cup coverage for that.
Yes, sir, I do. Low down for us, right?
Yep, we'll be back Sunday evening around Sunday evening. We'll have another video up recapping that race. We will have an audio version of this as well posted. Sean has the Cup recap for this tonight. I'll put that in the link in the description as well. Make sure to follow Johnny's social media will be in the link in the description, so will mine. Thank you for watching. We will see you Sunday after the Bristol race. Have a great rest of your night.